All right, recording. Do clap. Good evening. Welcome to episode 3 of Deepwater Topics. I'm Derek Eldridge.
I'm Frederick Green.
And on tonight's episode, we are going to be discussing the
State of the nation. That's what we're going to be addressing.
state of the nation, all the unrest going on. First and foremost, before we get going, I just want to apologize for our sporadic scheduling. We're trying to get timing down with being able to deliver content as consistent as possible. But we're a one-man band. You know, the editing process takes some time, lining everything up, getting clips out to you guys. So just bear with us on that. And we also want this to be as interactive as possible. So don't feel afraid to leave some comments. And if there's anything you want to hear us discuss, put it out there. We're going to be as interactive as possible with replying and having, some civil discussions. But, leave that hate at the door. We want to be able to have civil discussions and be able to bring out the best in people. This is all about unity and love and coming together. So,
Where would you like to start?
man, I feel like this keeps going down.
Well,
We're going to adjust that up a little bit.
I was excited to start this episode. It's been a little bit of time since we filmed our last one. Like he was explaining, the content, we will be bringing content a little bit more frequently. We're just both doing a lot of different things. My brother here, he does a lot of editing and filming. I'm in school, obviously, and we're devoted to other things, but this is a priority. So we will be bringing more content, a little bit more expedited, should we say. But today we're going to be talking about the BLM movement and pretty much the state of the nation, how a lot of the hate and divide is being spread and the way the world looks right now. And I think there's no better people than us to address it, especially being in the skin that we're in. I think when you have served your country, you have an ability to speak on what's going on. I feel like a lot of people have opinions, but they're speaking from their couch. Whereas there's a lot of people in this world that's actually been around the world and seen some things. And those are the people that usually don't talk. So I think it's very important for people like you and I to have this opportunity to address. Certainly the BLM first is something I would like to talk about. I would love to know or hear your opinion on the movement. And then also just the state of the nation.
Thanks for setting me up. Good wingman. Again, with everything we discuss, this is our opinions and what we have formed through our experience. Everyone's experience is different. And this is just a platform for us to put it out to just be able to let people talk. There's a big divide in the country right now where if your opinion doesn't match the other person's opinion, you're automatically wrong, or you're a homophobe or a racist or a bigot, and it's just not true. So I think my opinion, with the whole BLM movement, I'm all for equality and progression of civil rights. But I feel like the movement, not even the movement, the organization of BLM, I feel like it's a mask. A mask to push an agenda. And I really feel like the agenda being pushed is to break down, the systematic values of what America is as a whole. America is a beautiful country where you're able to express your feelings and your opinions freely. And right now, it's if you're not for BLM, then you're not for racial progression and equality. That's kind of what I've come across in talking with people, and they get very defensive and angry when you don't agree with them. And I really believe that that the organization of BLM, it's run by old white people, and I feel like they're using the black community as a vice to push their agenda of division, separation, and ultimately pushing a communistic value like system.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because leading up to me opening up the question on what you think about it, I said some individuals had the opportunity to travel the world and see a little different systematic approaches to managing people. So you have a different view, especially for us going to Iraq and seeing how they live in the mahallas and then seeing how they live in the inner cities. You get to see the divide. You get to see the crookedness of their politics and their system. So having this conversation with you, it's a lot more accepting than it would be just hearing someone's opinion that's sitting on the couch, because I feel that you've earned your right to have an opinion about what's going on, whether that's black, white, Indian, or whatever it is, because it's American and you fought for this country. So I feel like more people need to have these kind of conversations, because just because I'm a black man doesn't mean I should be offended by the way you feel about the BLM movement. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, it's not even the movement; it's the organization.
And I like how you classified that and specified that, should I say, because the movement we all know is needed, but the organization, the founders, the individuals that are responsible for pushing the agendas that they're creating, I can see a lot of sketchiness. You know what I mean? So I just want to give my own opinion about the BLM movement. I feel that it's a it's a blanket. It's a distraction. It's a tool used much like marketing. It's used to fuel the people. And I feel like what I mean by fuel the people, I mean gassing them up. And one thing in the black community that we're used to is trauma. We're controlled by trauma based off of our own personal trauma, the stories of trauma, the trauma that results from slavery. It's just something that within our culture we maintain and we hold on to, and it influences our decision making. So when I see organizations like the BLM, it makes me upset, because these are movements that benefit off of black communities' trauma. They don't necessarily have an agenda to fix things. They just want to financially gain from our hurt and from our pain and keep it going so the system can maintain. And what I mean by this is one of the founders of the BLM movement is basically a pimp. You know what I mean? And when you look at organizations, most organizations are pimps that use the people as a product to get what they need. So when I look at the BLM movement, I kind of look at what have they done in the inner cities? What have they done in the ghettos? What have they done to actually make movement other than protest and riot and create more divide? And like you said, it's not necessarily the movement of the BLM that I have an issue with. It's the actual organization. For example, these individuals get donations. They get funding to do the things that they're doing. And none of this funding is going to the places that it needs to go. And those are the kind of issues that I have. You know what I mean?
Well, the donation link on the website, it goes straight to the Democratic Party.
Boom.
So, again, they're using the traumas of the black community to fund what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of this, and I just laugh because, you know, I'd be considered a conspiracy theorist, but I mean, just 14 days to flatten the curve, you know, and now we're talking about mandatory vaccinations. You know, it's not conspiracies anymore. Like, this shit's happening in real time, in real life. And I know not a lot of people are religious, but I believe where all this COVID is pushing is towards, you know, moneyless transfers and eventually a chip, whether that's through these mandatory vaccinations. But then if you look in the Bible, you know, mark of the beast.
But see, when you start talking about stuff like this, you get a lot of people, you know, panic, because a lot of people are not accustomed to reading their Bibles or paying attention to what's going on, especially if it's not affecting them personally. So But to pull it back to the BLM concept and partnering with the BLM concept, a very important thing that I feel needs to be addressed is the state of the Black community. I feel like as a Black man born and raised in California, in Southern California, at that in poverty, I feel like we've grown up to be taught that there's someone oppressing us. And that mind frame and that form of thought, it's a self imprisonment. And we teach our children to have that same mind frame. And it affects us so much to the point where we have organizations that will come and pick up on these things and see where we're hurting and use it as a marketable tool and allow us to continue to hurt ourselves while they feed us hip hop music, they feed us drugs, they feed us this lifestyle that we're supposed to be wanting to live, but they're not feeding you the proper way to live. They're not feeding you the proper way to eat. They're not giving you the proper way to raise your children. It's all trauma based. And if you know anything about trauma, trauma is a triggering effect. So what that means is if something happened to you in 1998 and it was traumatic to you, and if you haven't worked on that trauma in 2020, if something reminds you of that trauma, it will trigger you emotionally and psychologically, causing you to digress, meaning it will affect your decision making. And that's what's going on within the Black community. It's not necessarily an entity or individual oppressing us. It's our decision making based off of unresolved trauma. And we have a lot of individuals and entities feeding off of that trauma. It's a lot, huh? A little too much. My bad.
No. I'm just trying to think of how I can tie it all together. You know, there's a lot going on in my head too. I'm a Pisces, so
oh yeah.
You know, I
say less.
I got a lot going on in this head. I think piggybacking off of what you said is this isn't a race thing right now. This is a class issue. With the sense of trying to pin, you know, the lower classes and middle class against each other. And I don't think people realize, like, it's power of the people, like power in numbers. Like, the government is not our leaders. They are the representation of us and what we want. And I think what is big is the voting. And the voting part isn't necessarily voting for Trump or Biden. Like, those motherfuckers don't do shit for you. It's actually researching who's running for your city council, who's running for your mayor, who's running for the governor, and really seeing the values behind these people and what they're really trying to do for the community, because that's where the issues lie.
Yeah.
And, you know, people, you know, they want to say, I think, you know, a lot of where this is going with all the election stuff is they're going to eventually just try to be like, oh, we don't need an election, you know, and voting is very important. And
you know what this reminds me of? Do you remember when we deployed, the whole reason why we deployed, our deployment?
Well, yeah, we set up the first democratic election in 2009 in Baghdad. Yeah.
And do you remember how the people began to rebel?
Yeah. Yeah, we set up the metal detectors. We guarded the stations. We got, you know, escorted the votes to make sure, like, no one, you know.
And this is in a land where democracy never existed in the way that we're trying to establish it or establish it, right? That feel is very similar to the feel of our nation right now.
Yeah.
Just that teeter-totter feel, meaning we could either go to a world war, or should I say a social war, or a political war, or even a resource war. It's economic war. Like, we have so many issues going on right now that it feels very similar to what we were doing over there. The only difference is we have a lot less free thinkers in our country. Whereas in their country, they're called radicalized when they're standing by their constitutional rights, when they know what they can and can't do. But us as Americans, we don't even read our constitutional rights. We don't even read the bills that are being passed. We don't even know our local governors, commissioners. We don't know any of these things. And that has a lot to do with what's going on, you know. But all the while, in the black community, we have the innate ability to blame the white man, and in the white community, you have the innate ability to blame the president. And everybody's just pointing fingers at each other, and nothing's getting done.
Mm-hmm.
It's just interesting to me.
Yeah. Well, I find it interesting too with people running, you know, for high office and like, we're going to change. I saw like Joe Biden was elected to Senate in 1973 and he served every term. The only time he hasn't served is the last 4 years. So what the fuck are you going to do now to change it? You had how many years? Like, and I'm not political in a sense of any means. I'm just saying is like, people, open up your fucking eyes. They're playing us like completely with their agendas, and it's all about control. And you know I keep getting off on my tangent, but I feel like I have to say it. You know, I just have to talk from my heart with like, I feel like a lot of what's going on is, again, it's trying to break down our systematic values of what America is. You know, I mean, like, I've talked to people and they're like, I hate capitalism and socialism, and I'm looking at them, I'm like, have you ever heard of a country named Venezuela that was, you know, number 3 in the world economy and was a thriving, flourishing nation, and then it went to socialism, and now
One of our privileges, not to cut you off, is that we don't have to know. And as an American, as sad as it sounds, for a very long time, that was true. And it has created this issue that we're stumbling upon because we're so privileged that our privilege is a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas then if you go to other countries, these other countries don't necessarily have these privileges. That's why they don't have these problems.
Mm-hmm.
But as an American, I can tell you there is no better country than America. And the reason I say this has nothing to do with the state of the nation. It has everything to do with what America stands for. And a lot of people don't understand that. America does not stand for black or white. America stands for freedom and liberty. And if you are determined within yourself to pursue those freedoms and those liberties, no man, black, white, or Asian can stop you. But now the issue with this conversation that we have is if you go into poverty. Now, poverty is a different way of life. In poverty, we call that excuse street. And I come from poverty and I still live in poverty. And what I mean by excuse street, it's my mom, why I can't go. It's my brothers. It's my sisters. It's my neighborhood. It's my gang. It's my hood. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. These are the things that need me. This is why I can't go and be successful. And I'm not generalizing, and I don't mean to generalize, because once again, I am a black man and I'm a proud black man, and I'll never be anything other than black. But at the end of the day, I've observed more black people hurting each other than I've ever witnessed any other culture hurting the black culture. And what I mean by that is, once again, that trauma. We give each other our trauma and it hurts because we haven't dealt with our own. So now we do have issues within the black community that we need to fix. But there is positives that are coming out of this uproar, this change of times, because there's a lot of laws and systematic flaws that we're identifying and that a lot of these organizations are pushing to change. But it's a dual-edged sword. So I think education and knowledge is the only thing that's going to get us through these things. It's not necessarily your emotions, because how you feel, a lot of us don't even understand, because it comes from a time we weren't even born in. A lot of our emotions within the black community is coming from slavery. Whereas then if you know what slavery was not the South Atlantic slave trade. The first form of slavery is in the book of Genesis. It's Moses, the pilgrimage from Egypt, being free into the jungle. And there's a group of people that are these same group of people that are having problems that are talked about in the Bible. And it talks about how these people are rebellious people. and they didn't even bend to their God that they knew. And we are these people. Now, within that, if you don't know who you are, it gives you the freedom to blame other people for why you are. And that's a lot of the problem that we're dealing with within the Black community. So instead of addressing these things, we rather blame a white person, an Asian person. And I think that's the biggest problem, because all the while, the people that have the knowledge in the Black community are taking from the people that don't. That's how I feel, at least.
I love talking on this show because I feel like, man, I got this. I'm intelligent. And then I sit next to Freddy, and I'm just like, man, there's so much I need to do. But this is why we started this show and this podcast, is to be able to just talk, you know. And I want.
How can you say that to me while you sit here looking like this? You don't have to be intelligent. You fly.
You know. I promised myself I'd make a living with my brain and not my body no more once I got out of the good old military.
Hey, you know, that pole is always there for you, brother.
Oh, so I guess what really comes to my mind, you know, we talk a lot, you know, talked a lot about, you know, problems within the Black community. But what, you know, obviously me and you are taking action, sitting here and talking out in the open, but it's like, what can we do as a nation to really just like move forward and pull out of this, you know, because there's so much hate right now. Mm-hmm. And it's, I mean, I was talking to you earlier about my boat trip. Mm-hmm. This guy got drunk and, you know, he was unprovoked, and his inner, and there's not even Black people on the boat. Mm-hmm. His inner racism came out, and he was just like dropping the hard R, mm-hmm. you know, and the crime and this and mm-hmm. that. And it's like, beside, you know, like me as a white, like I never owned any slaves. My grandfathers, my family never owned any slaves. Mm-hmm. My great-great-granduncle, Ulysses S. Grant, which led the Union Army, mm-hmm. you know? And so it's like, I don't feel like I should, you know, it's like, what can I do to help more? But it's not like, oh, I'm white privilege, I'm a bad white man, let me fucking kiss your feet and, mm-hmm. and you know, it's coming out not in an intellectual way, but it's like, what can we do more? You know, it's like, I feel like a lot of people, you know, that trying to.
No, you know, I understand. You know,
I'm trying to say it.
No, I understand. Like, and it's funny because I had this conversation with one of my clients, and my client, he was coming from a different aspect, but he asked the same question. He's like, what do you think the answer is? First off, I don't have any answers. And if you think you have an answer, you're part of the problem. You know, because me alone, I'm just one stick. But if you put 15 sticks together, we're stronger. But my view on this situation, there's two things that every man needs. Not just a Black man, not just a white man. Every man needs. So I can only address men because I'm a man. If I was a female, I would be addressing females. I'm not biased or anything like that. But as a man, two men sitting here, right? Mm-hmm. The two things that both of us need in our lives to be successful is confirmation and validation. Confirmation is, yes, I am here. I am breathing. I'm alive. I'm important. And validation, you see me and you see that I'm alive and that I'm important. Those are two things that we need. And if we can exchange that equally, we don't have a problem. Mm-hmm. It's make believe. It's marketing. It's media. It's politics. It's divide. Mm-hmm. But if us as two people can sit here and validate and confirm our existence, we won't have a problem. But the moment that we're enabled to confirm and validate our importance of existence, mm-hmm. we'll never see eye to eye. Does that make sense?
Complete sense.
And that's step one, because it starts with looking at yourself in the mirror. First off, I'm not your enemy and you're not my enemy. The only enemy that you have in this life is yourself. The only person that has ever hurt you is you up until a certain age. So to feel hatred towards me is just self-reflection of hatred you have for yourself. So until you can fix that hate that you have for yourself, you will never love anyone. You will just spread that hate like peanut butter and jelly.
Mm-hmm. Man, I like peanut butter and jelly. So
that's good too.
No, I thanks for clarifying that. You know, that's, I mean, it breaks it down in simple layman terms. And I want to address just like, what are you doing? You know, sometimes this, you think that you're just some social justice warrior because you're posting on Instagram and you're adding fuel to the fire, but it's like, what are you doing to build your community? And this isn't, you know, a race thing or anything, but just your community as a whole. Are you out there trying to help feed the homeless? Are you out there rebuilding businesses? Are you out there, you know, volunteering with all the fires going on? You know, there's, I think with me, you know, you know, I'm an empath. Like, I feel people's pain and that energy. And so in my head, I'm like, I want to help the world. I want to go to Africa and help all the little starving kids and not, you know, and then after going, you know, through AA and going through my therapy, I realized that there's so much more that I can do to be of service to humanity without these grand big gestures. I mean, you know, the biggest thing with my sobriety is being able to give back and talk to, you know, veterans, you know, and talk about my sobriety and talk about where I've been. And if I can help pull someone out of that darkness that we as veterans have all been, you know, and save some brothers from getting a call, you know, like it's all worth it. So instead of pointing, you know, we talked a lot about the blame game. It's like, look into yourself and step up. And what are you doing to help the human collective evolve?
I've always believed that if you're not willing to do anything, you have no right to talk. If you have no intent to fix things or to better things, just sit down and be quiet. Just let it happen. Because any way you put it, a lot of people are threatened with the structure of our norm. But in all reality, it was never a norm, because norm is evolution. It's forever evolving with time. So this is just a time shift. And time will continue to shift as we continue to age, and we're going to see some comfortable and uncomfortable things. But I feel like without discomfort, there's no growth. This is it's an uncomfortable time in the Americas, but this is an opportunity for growth. We could either digress or we can grow. And I feel that I'm going to do my part. And what that is to speak unbiasedly, not just about black people or white people. I'm going to speak my truths from my walk. You know what I mean? And that's the best that I can do. And then look myself in the mirror and be accountable. I mean, for everything that I do as a man, not judging other people, but judging myself. But that's all I can do for humanity.
Right there with you, man. And I think, you know, it's hard to be able to get up and talk like we're talking, you know, so I'm proud of you, proud of us. Thanks for coming down, as always. You know, I think we're about time to wrap up. I think that's a good spot.
I think so. The last thing I want to say is I want to thank you for this excellent editing. So you guys, if you guys ever need some work done, my brother, check out his Instagram page. He has short stories. He has a lot of stuff that he has going on. This man is amazing. You guys need to check out his work. I'm telling you.
Oh, shucks, you're making me blush. I'd also like to thank our sponsor here, Deepwater Clothing. If you like what you hear, you know, subscribe. Like I said, we want this to be an interactive place where we can all just discuss and just talk. It's good to just even talk, whether you come to an agreement or not. Like, it's therapeutic and healing just to get that shit off your chest and to be like, oh man, I haven't looked at it from that perspective. Because that's what healing does, is like within therapy is seeing a situation from a different perspective that you never looked at it before.
Facts.
So thank you for joining us tonight. Subscribe, comment, tell your mama,
Your friends, your sisters, your aunties.
tell them all. Until next time.
Peace.